Hi everyone, I'm Sanjana and I have Eepsita with me today. And let's talk to Eepsita about product marketing in the B2B SaaS space. And we'll be answering questions like who's a product marketer, what is product marketing, and responsibilities and KPIs of a product marketer, and how we align with different teams. So stay tuned. And let me introduce Eepsita to you. Eepsita is a positioning and product marketing expert. After leading GTM and product marketing for Capillary and Vymo, Eepsita has founded the country's first product marketing consulting firm called Simple Words. They help SaaS and B2B orgs around the world to take their products to the market. So, hi Eepsita, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, thanks Sanjana for having me here. I've already seen so much of all of the YouTube videos that you've put up around B2B marketing, and
Thank you. Yeah.
each and every video of them is so power packed. Love it.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to have you here. And I'm really excited to talk everything about product marketing today, because that's a topic that's close to my heart as well. So yeah, let's get
Of
started.
course. Absolutely.
Yeah. So like first of all, I wanted to start by understanding or hear from your own words, like where did you start your career and where are you now? And like how has the journey been so far for you?
Wow, I think I've been in the space for about 12 years now. And for anybody who had been in India 12 years ago, right? Product marketing as a niche itself was so underdeveloped that I have to say it's been quite a journey to get to where I'm at.
Definitely.
Um, I think there are different names that people understand product marketing with, depending on whether you're in the B2C space, B2B space. Even within the B2B space, there are so many different aspects of marketing, right? There could be brand marketing, there could be demand generation, there could be content that ideally falls under brand itself, there could be product marketing. So, just toning down these niches, I think we're still in the process of discovering that in India. That said, my journey has been an exploration of multiple facets before I ended up actually discovering SaaS product marketing. And that happened for
Yeah.
me largely in the States when I was working with an edtech SaaS organization. And that's where I really understood what product marketing is, how it aligns with the rest of the teams that exist, and particularly when it is, let's say, an enterprise driven setup in a B2B tech stack or a SaaS marketing space. How relevant product marketing then becomes. So ever since I've been within this space pure and pure, and after that I'd moved to India, which is where I had set up and led the entire GTM for Capillary. Um, After Capillary, I moved on to Vymo, which is where we did the same thing again. Both Capillary and Vymo are now Series 3 and Series C organizations. So obviously there's a lot of scale that we've been able to see there.
Yeah. And what about Simple Words? Like what made you uh find like Simple Words?
Yeah, so I think where I was setting up my team at Capillary, and then when I was setting up my team at Vymo, right? One of the first things we look out to hire is product marketers with some
Yeah.
sort of experience. And one big thing that you'll see out there in the world is that, especially more so in India, right? We do find product marketers who are absolutely nascent and who are very, very new in their careers, which is great because there's a lot of energy that's brought to the table. Unfortunately, however, there aren't people within teams who have a lot of depth of experience, because of which
Mm.
what happens is there is no direction that can be given to these folks. And more often than not, these folks will then start gravitating towards more brand related roles or more demand generation related roles and lose out on the essence of the product itself. So that was one of the problems. The second problem is that if I am the one leading the team, at a point, I would also want somebody with a lot of experience to come in and take over things that I am supposed to be taking care of as the head of product marketing, right? Unfortunately, I couldn't see a lot of that because just the talent is so bleak in the country right now, where because there is such little awareness of product marketing, I was struggling to get like more senior folks onto the team. They just either didn't exist, or if they existed, they were already set up in their comfortable jobs, right? And this was an obvious lack that I had felt firsthand leading the product marketing and GTM teams for Capillary and Vymo. And these are big league organizations, right? Which is when
Yeah.
it made me realize that there is definitely space for us to fill in this entire segment where we come in with that sort of an expertise of how can we potentially set up product marketing, how can we bring in the kind of 12 years of experience that I have in product
Hmm.
marketing and GTM and make that accessible to the rest of the SaaS and B2B tech organizations, not just of India. Then we expanded it to the world because I've been privileged enough to have worked in Germany, to have worked in the States, and that's how Simple Words was set up.
That's interesting. Cool. Like, yeah, I want to like talk more about, the product marketing industry for sure. And maybe let's start with, what is product marketing and like who is a product marketer, right? I've seen plenty of people confuse product marketing with brand or content or digital marketing, and they're not even aware of the term product marketing. And I've had like weird questions in my DM from people whose role is running ads, but their profile says they are a product marketer. Like, have you come across this? Have people reached out to you asking, what is product marketing?
It's I think of this entire conversation, this is going to be one of the most pertinent questions, right? And I think for any product marketer or any senior product marketing person that you speak to, this is the one question that is
Yeah.
going to be most prominent in defining what product marketing is. Um, so there are two ways to go about this, right? One part of understanding what product marketing is specifically understanding what are you taking up, what are your roles and responsibilities, much like what you brought up, Sanjana, which is that a lot of the times people are making ads and then they're calling themselves product marketers, and there seems to be some dissonance there. The other approach of understanding what product marketing is, which is the kind of approach I generally go for, is
Okay.
understanding what are your organization's goals and how do you find alignment with those goals in product marketing.
Hmm.
Now, for something like, let's say, a demand generation or for content marketing, right? The scope of responsibility is rather straightforward. You have to potentially be running ads, you have to be running some sorts of ABM email campaigns. Or
Hmm.
for that matter, if it's content, then you have to be taking a few content pieces forward. You have to understand how you want that funnel to keep working for you in a content space. As soon as it comes to product marketing, right? It's those spaces in between of how you can actually drive business growth. If I
Hmm.
had to define product marketing, right, Sanjana, here's how I would see it. It's the one function that truly understands what your product is, and especially what the value of your product is vis-a-vis what the problem of your ICP is, and then
Okay.
drives it forward in the best way possible. This driving it forward could now look like a lot of different things. And that's where I think further in the conversation, once we keep going into it, right, we'll also identify the kinds of teams we interact with. Because driving the conversation of your best product forward sometimes can just look like aligning with your demand generation teams, aligning with your content teams to give them necessary ammunition to take their specific spaces forward. Which means that if somebody is writing ad copies and taking ads forward, right? What if, as a product marketer, I could give them the exact insight on what my
Yeah.
ICP is
True.
looking for, right?
True.
That is a very important part of product marketing. For a content marketer, for instance, there could be a lot of high level thought leadership things going on. But what if there is a feature within my product itself where I can just have the tiniest of plugs within that entire thought leadership piece of how this could be something that could be plugged into for my organization and brand, right? Which the content marketer may or may not be able to think of themselves because they don't have that proximity to the product, right?
Yeah.
So these are ways in which like the marketing side of things get handled. But as soon as you start moving to more mature organizations, right, especially ones with, let's say, enterprise level customers, or let's say people with a lot of breadth of customers who are now looking to upsell or cross sell, a lot of the times you will need to pass over this information not to the marketing teams who are looking to acquire completely new leads and completely new prospects, but to people who are engaging with your existing customers. And this becomes your customer success team and your sales teams. So how can you then empower them with the best of your product, with the best of how your ICP could be using their product, so that this is the information that they can then take forward into helping grow the business with their existing customers. So if you see that, product marketing to me will always be defined by what stage is my organization at? What are my current priorities? And where exactly am I going to be fitting this product marketing function within the scope of, within the team establishment, within the internal dynamics of the team? And there will never be a unanimous answer for specifically what roles and
Yeah.
responsibilities product marketing has, because just this answer of what your priorities are, what your internal team make looks like, can be so vastly different for every organization.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why people don't get don't get this don't get what product marketing is, because there is no like a definition to what is product marketing, because it differs from an org to org, right? But when it comes to SEO or content, there is a definition. People know what they should do, and like if you just do a Google search about how to do content marketing right, you'll find plenty of articles, right? But when it comes to product marketing, let's say you are researching about how to improve your product adoption, you may find ideas, but you will not be able to replicate the same for your org, because the problems that you face will be different. But like that's how I also like see it. Like it's very difficult to define what is product marketing. So we have to like adapt based on how what at what stage our company is, and what is our business model is, and then define product marketing ourselves.
Yeah, and it's very interesting you say that, because as a matter of fact, one of the most powerful assets that a senior product marketing person brings to the table is, in fact, exactly that, right? When there is so much ambiguity in the role, just defining what the function needs to be doing, just understanding what are the different priorities product marketing needs to be having for an organization, I think that itself just merits so much value that senior folks bring into the table. And that's
Yeah,
also part of why hiring for product marketing is its own stressor, because more often than not, when you are looking for an SEO, when you're looking for content, you already know the specific skills that are needed for it. As soon as you
yeah,
venture into the product marketing realm, right, there are a few things that you'll still need to be very good at. For instance, copywriting is the one thing that you just need to
definitely.
have, because there's so much of value articulation that product marketing involves. But beyond that, just this spatial understanding of where you fit in an organization, of how you want to be driving those organizations' goals, right? The ability to zoom in and then zoom out and look at everything with an eagle's eye perspective, but then zoom right back in when you need to get things done. There's so much value in that, and there are so few ways for you to be able to identify candidates, or put that up on a job description, because this becomes
Mm.
so ambiguous as a skill to have, let's say.
Yeah, and from what I understand so far, I guess you need to understand the field a little bit to venture into product marketing. So, does that mean that you should already have experience in, let's say, content before you venture into product marketing? Or can a fresher, let's say, can venture into product marketing and understand the field?
I think the most important thing, right, in product marketing, and this is something that I even use when I'm hiring for Simple Words and when we're setting up these pods at Simple Words for different verticals, right, is how much can you understand what your customer needs and wants, right?
Okay.
Uh, any function, absolutely any function. This could be somebody who's worked in analytics. This could be somebody who's worked
Yeah.
in content. This could be somebody who's worked in customer success, pre-sales, sales, whatever. The more you're able to truly understand what your ICP's problems are, the
Well said.
more
Yeah.
effective you're going to be at solving for product marketing problems that come up. Because
Yeah.
what happens then is, when one of the key tasks of a product marketing person, right, is just articulating value for the product that you're creating. And now that articulation of value doesn't just end at a product level, at every feature level, at every single external comms that you're doing, no matter what event you're organizing and you want to put out a brochure that gives a brief of what your product is, right? For each of those things, you will need to understand how your product is helping people. And that's best done when you understand what are the specific problems that are being solved. So that
Yeah.
customer empathy, I think, is one of the biggest things that you need to be looking out for. That said, I do think that's not exclusively it. You need to be able to have a way with words. I think that's just the bottom line for all things product marketing, is that
Well said.
you have to be really good at copywriting. The fewer
Yeah.
words you use, or the more accurate words you use, the better your entire product marketing is going to be.
Yeah, very well said. And now let's talk about responsibilities, right? Like the day-to-day responsibilities of a product marketer. What do they do every day?
Yeah, yeah. I think, again, this will now depend on what level of seniority product marketers have. But let me look at it as a function itself. What are the responsibilities of that function itself, right? Um, Identify what stage the organization is at. If it's an early stage organization, right, chances are you're still at that stage where you're looking to get more people on board, where you're still getting to get more people to try your product, or even be made aware of your product itself. At this point, the business priorities then tend towards a larger tofu and mofu related conversation. Tofu is top of the funnel, mofu is middle of the funnel. What you'd want to be doing then is, most of your product marketing needs to be about how can you articulate the value of your product to, let's say, somebody who's just ended up on your landing page, then
Okay.
potentially somebody who's actually being pulled into your landing page from an ad, let's say, or
Yeah.
somebody who's going to be interacting with your email marketing efforts. Or for that matter, let's say once they have come in, let's say you had one case study that had been put up, right? Now, once they download a case study, you can actually start an entire email drip marketing campaign. At each step of that email campaign, there are different plugs that you can have for your product, different value propositions that can be added, different case studies that can be substantiated your conversation, so that this middle of the funnel then starts moving towards the bottom of the funnel. And this can be a sales ready lead that's passed on to your sales teams, right? So for each of these things, right, identify what assets are required at each point, and
Okay.
then go into creating the best kind of assets that are both bridging what your product brings to the table and what specifically the kind of people you're talking to will have a problem, and then showcase that within those assets. So this entire creation of assets becomes one of the key roles of a product marketing team. The second thing that comes into this is even identifying at what spaces can these assets be used, right? So one part of it is creation, but the other part of it is distribution. Working with different teams. And I'm not just talking about marketing teams, but I'm also talking about, let's say, interacting with your sales teams and your
Yeah.
sales managers and letting them know that, hey, you know what, we may not have closed this customer yet, but if you're like, let's say, there's a 2 week lag in the conversation that you're having, and there's just nothing for you to follow up without being a little pesky. Maybe this is just a case study that you can be using and share it with them. This is going to be relevant to your customer profile. And yeah, this is a good way for you to keep the conversation going, right? There are different functions that you're interacting with then, that you are like intentionally solving for that distribution in that process. So this becomes the second thing. The third thing is, at all times, and this is a very interesting anecdote because Simple Words works with Capillary right now, right? And we're their product marketing team. Lalit, who's like the product director at Capillary, he's himself had this said once that there's a good chance that the Simple Words team knows more of the product than anybody else at Capillary, because that's one of the core things that you will have to do as a product marketing person, which is understand your product to the T. And oftentimes, the bigger the product, the more the PMs engaged within that product, right? However, chances are you will not have a 1:1 mapping of PMs to product marketing managers. So chances are the product marketing team is going to be relatively smaller than the product team itself, in which case you get access to a bigger breadth of the product itself, and you need to know every single feature that's coming out. You need to be able to understand what the roadmap looks like. You need to be able to understand the timeline, so that you're that one point of contact where you can bring in that voice of the customer to the table and be like, hey, you know what, there are things that the customers need to know about what we're building. These are things that can actually help them upsell or make them want to cross sell, or for that matter, even reassure them that they have invested in the right product. So that part of understanding that entire roadmap, understanding what are the new features that are being built, and then finding a way to make that reach your customers, that
Yeah.
becomes a very core responsibility of product marketing. And then depending on what stage of the organization is at, right? This is one of the least spoken about things. And I would also go as far as saying this is one of the least understood things. But especially when you have to think of positioning at this point, a lot of the organizations rely on their product marketing teams for this positioning.
Yeah.
And just being able to really scale back, separate yourself from the product and the narrative around your product, and then understand, hey, you know what? Maybe this is not the kind of conversation we want to be taking forward. Maybe the way we are pitching our product itself needs to be a very different thing. Maybe we're slating it in a certain category, but after, like, let's say the first 50 customers or the first 100 customers, we're realizing that most of our customers are actually slating it in a different category altogether. Maybe it's time that we actually look into that. This will more often than not be exclusively a product marketing function. This will have to be also aligned with all of the senior management. And I don't just
Leadership.
mean the
Yeah.
CEO, I mean every single
Yeah.
space that comes in there, because there needs to be a lot of alignment in this. But the core team that has the responsibility of executing it falls down to product marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very well said. And like in the first point you mentioned about, creating assets, right? Will product marketers be writing the content, or you take the help of the content team and you just give them insights?
Honestly, I think this has a lot to do with bandwidth, internal team
Mm-hmm.
bandwidth, and the kinds of
Okay.
responsibilities that there are. I would always recommend, when it's a case study or anything
Yeah.
that has the highest interface with the product, my recommendation will always be the product marketing team picks it up. Of course, this
Yeah.
is given that they do have the bandwidth. If at all, if at all there is a bandwidth constraint, I think this also goes to show really well and reflects really well on how the internal team collaboration dynamics exist, right? I think there are a very few privileged teams that have the privilege of really good working relationships with the rest of the teams also. But as
Yeah.
realities of any work environment go, there could be a lot of siloed working in a lot of other spaces, right? So identify what your organization structure is. If you are able to set up that collaboration and you're having bandwidth constraints, then definitely have like a collaboration with the content team who can help you productionize these things quicker. But if that sort
Yeah.
of a thing doesn't exist, and especially if you have the bandwidth, let the first priority always be for the product marketing person to create anything that has more product related things to go out.
Yeah, very well said. I think in my company, we have that privilege. So when it comes to case studies, right, what we do is we record the case study interview
Hmm.
with the customer, and then we pass on
Hmm.
that video to the content team. Now they can listen to the voice of the customer themselves and turn that into a written case study or even a video case study, right? So that's how we do that. And then when it comes to blogs, we make sure that like we produce at least like 3 to 4 product blogs every quarter. And what I do is I know that a product blog should come from a product marketer. So, but then I don't have the time to write the blog entirely myself, right? Because of the bandwidth and stuff. So what I do is I give them the gist of the blog, like write down like the content as a draft, and then I share it with them, and it's now their job to beautify that blog and make sure that the grammar and stuff are correct, and then they publish it. So that's how we work. Now if
Yeah, and that's a, oh, sorry, you were saying.
no, like, yeah, that like you said, since we have that privilege, we are able to do it. But I've seen companies where, a product marketer will have to write the blog themselves because they don't have the help of the content team there, because they don't understand the product that much. But I think It's also essential for the content team to be involved in understanding the product at least a little bit so they can help the product marketers get the job done right for them.
Absolutely. In fact, when you say that itself, right, another great way for fostering that sort of an internal collaboration, right? And this is again something that happens with multiple partners that we work with. Most of the product marketing assets or collaterals that are created that are particularly pertaining to features, let's say if that's a feature sheet or
Yeah.
if that's a deck, right? This is intentionally passed over to the marketing teams so that a lot of these conversations, let's say if they had to write a blog about things, and if it's a product blog, and if we just had to give them pointers on, hey, these are the things that we need to pick up, they also will always have assets in tandem with that particular conversation itself, so that they're able to quickly ramp up on specifically what needs to be picked up, and then they can go ahead and keep executing it. So that's actually, yeah, that's a great way of working also.
Yeah. Fine. Yeah. And what else? Like, probably we can talk about KPIs for a product marketer.
Yeah, for sure. I think before we move into KPIs, right? Another thing that just came up while we were having this conversation about this collaboration was that
Yeah.
sometimes the way the teams are set itself, right? What can happen is that, um, and this is something that every product marketing team will have to face and will have to navigate through and cross through the hurdle. I'm sure, Sanjana, at some point you have also experienced that. But because of the nature of ambiguity of the function, right? A lot of miscellaneous things can instead fall into product marketing that don't necessarily help
Happens
us.
every day. Happens every
Exactly,
day.
exactly. Of course it does,
Yeah.
of course. Which is why I wanted to call it out, because this is the reality of the function, right? And I think if we only talk about the ideal state, then we'll be missing out on a lot of what really happens here.
Yeah.
But there will be a lot of miscellaneous things. In part, sometimes it could be driven by the organization itself not understanding what the function is. Maybe
True.
there could be one core cheerleader, maybe there could be one core influencer who understood what this function was. They rooted for this function to be a part of the team, but then the rest of the organization doesn't see value in it. It's definitely going to be a tougher space to be working in then. But this is again a responsibility that falls on to product marketers, especially at this stage of it still being like a niche that's being developed. It isn't in its
Mm.
most mature format, right? But another thing that a product marketer will need to always be mindful of is, how are you able to show why you exist within the organization? So in a way, you
Mm.
have to be selling this function even within the organization, because not everybody understands it. Even within our conversation, we could have such different takes about it, right? And
Yeah.
more often than not, what will help people is having some sort of north stars to be able to identify where you're contributing. So is where I
Yeah.
segue into the KPIs also, right?
Yeah.
These North Stars can then be based on bigger business priorities. So, when somebody is coming in for a product marketing interview, I know a lot of your viewers are going to be people who are potentially exploring this function itself. When you're having an interview, try asking the hiring manager this, that specifically what are we looking to impact with product marketing within our entire business structure, because that will give you a direction of how you can be adding value. That will give you a direction of how you can prioritize the different tasks, the miscellaneous tasks that are added. As long as you're true to a few North Star metrics that you have, you're good. But as soon as it starts moving into other dimensions, sometimes it's still smart to do that, because you want to foster relationships. At the end of the day, the best product marketers will be able to have good interdepartmental relationships. There's just no way
Mm.
around that. Product marketing is a function that needs to have that skill. But sometimes it's also okay to push back on a few things and be like, hey, this may not necessarily be the best way for me to be adding value to the organization, right? So identify what those goals are. Moving from those goals to what these KPIs can then come down to, right? Um, Product marketing as a function will have a dual nature, where a few of these efforts that you put into will have a very like a specific metric that you can be tracking. A lot of the other activities that you do will be a very qualitative space for you, where you just These things just need to be happening of sorts, and there are no ways to measure. But if you don't do it, that's what takes away a little bit of the credibility of the organization or credibility of the entire space itself. So if I have to move into what are the specific metrics that you can be tracking, figure out the stage of your organization. Again, the earlier the stage, the more you need to be thinking of what are my top of the funnel, what are my middle of the funnel, what are my bottom of the funnel. A lot of the times, because there are other teams dedicated to this, right? The ownership of these metrics could lay with these teams. But let's say there could be a few assets that outperform the other assets. It then becomes the responsibility of product marketers to be able to track the performance of each of these assets at the stages of the funnel, to be able to understand what are the kinds of conversations you would want to double down on, to get some perspective of how your customers or how your prospects are interacting with that, and then identify, relay that information back to the product team also, that hey, this is something that's really resonating, maybe we need to be creating more conversation around this. So that becomes one part. Let's say your organization is a little more mature, right? At this point, maybe it's not your top of the funnel or middle of the funnel that's struggling. Maybe that entire system is set up, but it's your bottom of the funnel that is potentially finding some qualms. Now, this could be because either your sales cycles are too long. Maybe your product is taking what should ideally be taking, like, let's say 3 months to close, is taking 6 7 months to close instead. And or maybe that your sales team just don't have enough bandwidth to keep creating new content to have conversations with your customers, or for that matter, they don't know what's going on. For instance, with a lot of mature organizations, what happens is, when you keep seeing movement in your sales teams, right? There are people coming in, new people coming in, people leaving at all times. You'll always struggle with your sales team just not being empowered with enough information at all times. So then, for you to be able to identify what are a few things that are going wrong within this entire space, in this case, let's say the time to closure, right? That can become a primary reading metric that you are supporting in.
Yeah.
Alternately, what can also happen is, let's say, from your top of the funnel till your bottom of the funnel, the time that has the lead velocity is what we call it, right? How long has that taken? And are there any things that product marketing can be aiding in that direction? That becomes one of the things. Now, for even more mature organizations, the problems that we'll be facing don't stop at top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, or bottom of the funnel. This is in fact what we call the inverse funnel of SaaS and B2B marketing. You know this, Sanjana, but as soon as you acquire a customer, right? Normally you're accustomed to seeing a funnel like that, which is, this is where you have the acquisition of the user, and once they're acquired, it almost feels like the funnel is over. In SaaS product marketing, you'll always have the inverse funnel going on, because
Yeah.
starting here, you begin a whole new journey of how you can be showing value to this acquired customer itself, just within their retention, just within their understanding of the product, usage of the product, expansion of the product within the teams, like within like mega enterprises also, because mega enterprises will not have just one persona within the team. They will have multiple teams that could potentially be engaging with your product. So now there are a lot of metrics within this inverted funnel that product marketing teams can be picking up. Those metrics can be something like product adoption. While PMs, more often than not, your product management team will be the sole owners of that metric. But depending on the kind of product you have, depending on, let's say, how much in-app interaction product marketing team needs to be having, or for that matter, how much interaction with the sales and CS teams the product marketing teams have set up, you could have metrics that are talking about the adoption of this. You can have metrics that show you what sort of an upsell impact have you been able to have, what sort of a cross sell impact you've been able to have, largely things tying down into business. All said and done, though, a big problem and a big question mark that is still faced within product marketing teams is the point of attribution. You can be creating a lot of value in each of these spaces. How do you attribute what exclusively was the nature of product marketing, the value that product marketing could add, versus the teams that are anyway doing these things? This is a question mark. I think there are different systems that need to be utterly tailored and utterly customized to different organizations to be able to get a grasp on this. But there is absolutely no one size fits all that has been able to solve for this attribution problem.
Very, very well said. I think you gave us the whole picture of the funnel and also the inverse funnel. For me, for example, I focus solely on the inverse funnel that you mentioned. Like I focus on the product life
Exactly.
cycle, but I've seen companies focus on like both the funnels, right? So thank you for
Yeah.
giving us the whole picture. I think we should also do a part two video where we can talk about, like you mentioned, right? We can talk about companies going from zero to 10 million ARR, like, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
we can do that.
absolutely. Especially because the stage of each of these conversations and the product marketing efforts can look so dramatically different. I'd be happy to have that conversation in detail next time. Yes.
Cool. I know that we are running out of time, so I'm gonna wrap up this video now, and maybe we can discuss when we can do the part two of the video, and there we can discuss, like we can elongate the conversation there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. And if at all, I just like to leave a word out. If at all there are any other questions that your viewers might have about like understanding specific parts, maybe even especially for people who are new within the SaaS and the B2B space, there could be a lot of new terms that could seem intimidating. But if there has been any confusion or if there are other things that they'd want to know, I'd be more than happy to pick those up and yeah, in the next conversation.
Definitely. And I'll also give your LinkedIn profile and your website link in the description so people can connect with you later if they want to chat more about this topic or if they need any help with, product marketing, for example. I'll do that for you.
Awesome.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Eepsita. It was really nice talking to you. And yeah, probably we'll schedule one soon again and we'll, yeah, talk to you again soon.
Yeah, such a pleasure, Sanjana. Thank you so much. Always so good to have another product marketer on the call because then you understand it. A lot of the times the conversations can be so
Oh,
um yeah, absolutely exactly. And so yeah, it was such a pleasure being here, Sanjana.
yeah, same here, Ripsita. Thank you so much and talk to you
Take
again. Bye
care.
bye.
Bye bye.